Hey guys, Ben with Oddly Armed, and today I'm going to be coming at you with another gun review, this time of a Brügger Thomet or B&T APC223. Now, B&T is one of my favorite gun manufacturers, made in Switzerland, so you know it's going to be absolutely fantastic in terms of build quality, but they don't have a whole lot on the rifle market so much as they do on the PCC market. And then once I get into that entire category, I got a couple of guns to throw in there. But let's go ahead, talk about the APC223 and look at my specific setup on it. So we aren't going to have a ton of history to go over with the APC223, and that's really because I'm holding it back for when I do PCCs, because the APC9, this guy's little brother, is actually going to have quite a bit more history behind it. But getting into what the APC is, B&T came out with the APC9 around 2010, and it's the Advanced Police Carbine. So it was their military and police product for the market. Now, it was meant to be a series of different caliber rifles and submachine guns. So you have the APC9, which was 9mm. You have the APC223, which is this guy, and that's in 5.56 NATO. And then also the machine gun version is called the APC 5.56. And then you also have the APC 308, which is going to be the heavy duty 7.62x51 version of this platform. So those are going to be your main calibers. Now mine again is an APC 223, and this is one of the original generations. So the updates to the APC series really starts with the 9mm first. So when they have the design, if they want to make a change, they'll change the 9mm, and then within a couple of years, the 223 and 308 variants will also have those changes. So to that end, again, this is a first generation of the APC 223, and that's kind of denoted by the Picatinny handguard up here, as well as the fact that it has a reciprocating charging handle, and you can't swap out the pistol grip. Now, my example here is an APC 9 Pro. So this is the newer generation, and some of the features from this got included into the current generation of the APC 223, the APC 223 Pro. And some of the biggest changes are an M-LOK handguard, so that got swapped in there instead of the Picatinny, as well as they changed out the lower to take AR-15 compatible grips, and they also made the bolt handle non-reciprocating. So that was a big change there, as well as they gave it these charging handles, which are popping it in and out on the side there. So you got the folding charging handle. But those are going to be the main differences that eventually got applied to the APC 223 to bring it up to the Pro spec. Now, as far as the history goes in military adoptions on the APC 223 or the APC 5.56, I really haven't been able to find any solid information on potential adopters. So I haven't been able to see any military units, whether special forces or small units, adopting these, or standing militaries picking them up. Because of course the Swiss military still uses the SG 550 series, so potentially if someday they upgrade to another rifle, maybe this will be in the running for it, but as of right now, these aren't seeing a ton of adoption besides on the civilian market. And that's really all there is to say about the history on the APC 223 at this point. So let's go ahead, get a close-in look at mine and see how I have it set up. So starting at the front of the APC 223, I do have a chemo muzzle device on this because this is an absolutely fantastic suppressor host, and we'll talk about that a little further on. But we also have our adjustable gas plug here at the front, and that has two settings, normal and adverse, and it's very well gassed, and again we'll talk about that in a little bit. But then we have the Picatinny rails on the side there. These do come with their own rail covers, so I have that installed, as well as a BCM 4 grip on mine. As far as the optic goes for mine, I'm running a Holosun AEMS red dot. This is actually one of my favorite red dots overall for cheaper, not quite as expensive as like an Aimpoint or a Neotech or some of the other higher end red dots. But all in all, I've had really good experiences with these, and I would definitely recommend them. Moving down to the controls on this, we do have a safety selector in about the same place it is on an AR-15, just slightly different. And then we also have our magazine release in the same spot as on an AR, and up above that is actually your bolt hold open and bolt release. So you lift up to hold the bolt open and you press down to release it. And then I just have a Magpul magazine. In the grip, we also have a storage compartment, and the grip on these is actually kind of hilarious how large it is compared to other options. It's very long compared to most guns. And then I do have backup iron sights that came with it. And then I do have the B&T skeleton folding stock on mine. And taking a look at the other side, you can go ahead and see that muzzle device on there, as well as our gas piston. And then if you look inside of the handguard here, you can kind of get a look at the barrel. It is a very, very nice barrel, and I believe it's about 8.75 inches, and it is fluted to make it a little bit lighter, but it is very well made. And then you can also kind of see the gas piston system in there. This uses a short stroke gas piston, pretty much directly derived from the AR-180. And moving back from there, we do have the charging handle. Again, on the Gen 1, it will be reciprocating, so kind of like your early SCARs. In the newer generation, the Pro Series, that is non-reciprocating, so that's one of the biggest changes there. And then moving down, we can just get a look at the controls, and again, it's going to be the same on both sides of the rifle, so it is completely ambidextrous. The charging handle, you can swap between the left and the right side pretty easily during disassembly. Then we'll just give you a look at the magazine. There's not too much to see on this side, and then we have the button there to fold the B&T stock. And let's go ahead and get started with the ratings with accuracy. And I'm going to give the APC223 a score of 4. And that's because I was able to get a 2.405 inch group using 55 grain Lithuanian GG&G ammunition at 100 yards. So that's not terrible, pretty good grouping considering it doesn't have a truly free-floated barrel. So the gas block is actually kind of cradled in the handguard. So I'm pretty happy with that accuracy overall. The next category is going to be aftermarket, and I'm going to give the B&T APC223 a 2, and that's because there really is not a lot of companies who are making aftermarket parts for the APC, especially in the 223 form, and especially for the Gen 1. So really the only company I can think of is HBI as far as aftermarket parts. They do charging handles. They do a lot more parts for the newer series, so for the Pro series, as well as like safety selectors, stuff like that, and stuff for the APC9. But they don't do a whole lot of parts for this, no handguards, stuff like that. The main company that is really going to be doing parts for these is just going to be B&T. So they make multiple different stock options. They make a collapsing folding stock option that you can throw on here, as well as a telescoping stock, which I have on my APC9. It's essentially the same design between the two. And then you have the skeleton stock that I have on mine, as well as the newer MBT stock, which is an aluminum side folding stock, which you can actually make work on this. As far as handguards go, you can swap the original series handguard with one of the newer Pro Series ones. I've tried it with 300 Blackout handguard that's a little bit shorter, but again, you're not seeing aftermarket options from anyone except for B&T. So you're basically just going to be swapping it out to a newer version of the B&T handguard. Now, next up we have durability, and I'm going to give the APC223 a full score of 5. That's because these are incredibly well made. This is Swiss to its very core. All the machining on it is absolute perfection. When you actually go and slide in the bolt carrier group, it actually creates a bit of a vacuum, which is kind of interesting, or when you slide it out, as well as with your gas piston. When you pull it out of the gas plug, it actually creates a vacuum, which is kind of interesting because most guns, there's a little bit of room for air to escape, but with everything on the B&T APC223, it's very tight fitted. So that is absolutely fantastic. The finish is like a parkerizing style. It looks very nice, extruded aluminum receiver, and then the polymer components are also very well made. So I really don't have anywhere that I can ding it in terms of durability. The only thing I can really think of is in the bolt carrier group. Some people have had issues with some wearing around where the cam pin's at, so I'll show you that a little bit more in the disassembly video, but mine's been really nice and I haven't really had any issues to speak of. And the next category we're going to go into is going to be ergonomics, where I'm going to give the APC223 a score of 4. So let's go ahead, start looking at it from the front here. And we can take a look at our gas adjuster there, our gas plug. So that is very easily adjusted, and that's just by turning it. It's not hard to do at all. There is a detent here. You don't have to hit a button, nothing like that. I will say though, if this starts getting carboned up, that does get very tight, and you might have to use some sort of a tool or pliers or something to move it, and that has happened to me before. Moving back from there, we're going to look at the one reason I'm going to be dinging it a point, and that's going to be our charging handle. So on the Gen 1, again, this has a reciprocating charging handle, so it moves back and forth with our bolt carrier group as it cycles. The newer Pro Series, that is now non-reciprocating, so it will stay forward while it's cycling. But still, it is a nice charging handle there. They also make a folding charging handle option for this, which stays forward, and that will stay a little bit more out of the way, especially as it is a reciprocating charging handle. Now, moving on from there, the next thing we're going to look at is our bolt catch, bolt release, and that's going to be this ledge here, and it's going to be on both sides of the rifle, so it is fully ambidextrous. And to release our bolt, since it's back, all we have to do is put our thumb on top of that ledge, press down, and it'll drop our bolt. Now, if you want to lock it open, all you got to do is use your trigger finger to get underneath the ledge, press it up, pull back on the charging handle, and your bolt will lock back. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning when it comes to the bolt release is it is very close to the magazine release, which is going to be this button on both sides of the rifle. And you can just see our magazine pop out there. And the concern there is it is very close to that bolt release. So it is completely possible to go to drop the bolt and instead you end up hitting the button and dropping your magazine. So that is something to be aware of there. And moving back, we do have our safety selector, and it is a 45-degree throw. And again, it is going to be on both sides of the rifle. It is very tactile, very easy to use. I have no complaints whatsoever about this safety. And then we're going to move back to the stock. And again, this is going to be a side folding stock on this one, the skeleton side folder. And looking at it, all you have to do is press in this button, and then our stock will go ahead and fold around to the right side. And if you can look here, there's this little tree looking thing and a little protrusion on the stock which pops over it, except that isn't super secure and it'll still pop open every once in a while. But to pop that back into place, all you got to do is pop it off that tree, flip it around, and it'll lock securely back into place. And that's really all we need to talk about as far as the ergonomics on the APC223 go. And I actually lied to you. There's one more thing I want to hit with ergonomics. So I actually used my APC223 last year at Moons Out Goons Out, which is a night vision match. And something that I noticed while I was using this rifle is I really defaulted back to AR-15 style usage. And what I mean by that is when the bolt was locked backwards, I go ahead and drop my magazine. When I reinsert in a magazine, I am a righty. So I actually noticed I came up here and dropped the bolt using that ledge and using my thumb. And it is actually in about the same place that the ping pong paddle is on the AR-15. And it feels very natural doing it. So again, if you do get one of these, that is an option for how to send the bolt home that actually works pretty well. And next up, we're going to have maintenance, where I'm going to give the APC223 a score of 3. And talking about disassembling and cleaning it, it's actually incredibly easy to do. Comes apart very nice and easily. I really don't have any complaints there. The only place you might get a little bit of problem is if the gas plug gets stuck in there a little bit with carbon. But other than that, it's very easy to get in there. The receiver's pretty open, so you can get in and clean everything. The place I'm going to be dinging it points is getting replacement parts for these. So even on like btparts.com, they don't sell a lot of replacement parts for the APC223. And then especially mine being a Gen 1 and having that reciprocating bolt carrier group, which is going to be different than the Gen 2 or the Pro Series. Getting replacement parts for these is going to be basically impossible. It's going to be very difficult, and they're going to be expensive when you do find them. So that's where I'm going to end up dropping off a couple of points. And next up, we're going to be talking about modularity, where the APC223 is going to get a score of 3. Now, talking about parts you can swap out on this, you can swap out the stocks. So again, you have the retractable one, different side folding ones, the MBT stock. So there are options there. Not so much aftermarket. You can do Picatinny rail adapters, so I believe that is something that is an option that's on the market. But that's really about it. As far as handguards go, again, there's not really a bunch of options on the market, but you can swap this to other versions of the APC223 handguards. And I believe also for the Gen 1s, you can swap it out to one of the Pro or Gen 2 series, or Gen 1.5, which is essentially a reciprocating charging handle with a swappable pistol grip. So that is an option. So you can change this to another AR style pistol grip instead of just the one that they have on here. Now, as far as caliber conversions go, that's really not going to be a thing with the APC223. So you can kind of see the screws here that hold in your trunnion and your barrel assembly. And it's definitely an armorer's level task to swap barrels. I have seen them sold before, but again, it's not something that you're going to be wanting to do very frequently, or if at all. And then again, the APC 300 is its own model. The main difference being the gas system is going to be shorter, necessitating a shorter handguard as well. So it's not going to be compatible with the same parts necessarily. Then talking about magazines, I've had really good luck with the APC 223 with mag pulls, your standard Stanag aluminum magazines, as well as Lancer magazines. They all work in this rifle. I haven't really run into any issues depending on if it's Gen 2 or Gen 3 mag pull. The one thing I would caution you on is don't monopod on the magazine, because it will cause malfunctions. That's the one time I've ever seen anything malfunction with this rifle, so that is something to be aware of. And the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be price, where the B&T APC223 is going to get at 2. And that's actually a bit higher than it would have been in the past. So back a couple of years ago, these were selling for $3,000 plus, and it's actually come down a little bit. So I've been seeing some deals on these pop up for around $2,500 to a little bit under $3,000. So the price has come down a little bit, and I believe that those are the Pro Series as well that are selling for a slightly lower price. Now, where you are going to be spending a ton of money, though, is going to be replacement parts. So like I was talking about, the retractable stock like I have on my APC9, those are like over $600. They're incredibly expensive. And some of that's because of the hydraulic buffer that's in the back of the receiver that attaches to the stock. That's going to add a ton of cost to it. And if you want to get a good look at that, watch the disassembly video I throw up. But that's one of the components that actually adds a lot to the price. And that's going to get us into shooting characteristics, where the APC223 is going to get a perfect score of 5. So speaking of the trigger, it is a nice trigger. It is a mil-spec style trigger, so it's not going to be super light. Mine comes in around 6 pounds, 6 ounces, so it's not particularly heavy either, but it's nice, it's crisp, it doesn't have a lot of creep to it. I don't really have complaints, and I wouldn't really switch it out. I have heard rumors that certain AR-15 style triggers will work in the APC series, like certain Elfman triggers, but I haven't really seen anything that really supports that. That's something you're recommended to do. So generally, I would just stick with the stock trigger on this. Now, moving to the recoil impulse, this has an incredibly smooth recoil for a piston gun. And a big part of that is going to be the hydraulic buffer I mentioned before. So that's at the back of the receiver here. And what that essentially does is it deadens the impact of the bolt carrier group as it impacts the back of the receiver. So it gives you a very smooth recoil impulse, and it's more of a gentle push than anything else. So this is one of the more pleasant guns to shoot. And speaking of that, as far as being a suppressor host goes, this is in the top 2. The only other thing that I can really think of that's comparable is my HK416, which is tuned with a special gas block. And this is very, very nice to shoot with that buffer in there. I have used this with my Saker 762, which is a full back pressure can, and you do switch it over to the suppressor setting for that, and it runs incredibly well. You almost feel like it's malfunctioning. The recoil is so smooth, and you're not getting any gas to the face with it. And I've also used my B&T SRBS 762 suppressor, so that's going to be a low back pressure suppressor that you have to run on the normal setting. And that's also very nice. It's very smooth. I really have no complaints on how this rifle shoots. Now let's get into reliability, where I'm going to give it a 5 as well. And the big thing there is I've actually used this in some pretty rough conditions. So again, when I took it to Moons Out Goons Out last year, the first night of the match, it was just pouring rain the entire time we were out there. It was like in the high 30s, maybe low 40s. And that's a pretty rough condition for a rifle to be in. And this thing got absolutely soaked. I was running a can on there, and it still worked perfectly. I didn't have a single malfunction with it. It functioned flawlessly with everything I put through it. So worked great there. And the second night, it got down to the 20s, and again, even sub-freezing temperatures, I never had any sort of a malfunction with the APC. So this is absolutely one of the most reliable rifles that I've experienced, and I would have no qualms at all trusting my life to it. And the final category that we're going to be talking about today is going to be weight. And the APC223 is going to get a 3 because it's going to come in at 7.4 pounds, which is a little bit heavy considering it's under a 9-inch barrel. But again, it's a very, very smooth shooter, partially due to that weight. So I'm going to let it slide on that a little bit, and it's not as heavy as some other things like the ACR. So again, 7.4 pounds, not the worst. All right, now that we have our categories out of the way, let's go ahead and add them all up and get a 36, which puts the APC223 into the A tier, and it solidly deserves that. Across the board, it has very, very nice shooting characteristics. It's fantastic recoil, very good suppressor host, maybe a little bit on the heavy side. Where it really gets let down is on the aftermarket support for it, as well as a bit on the price. But overall, it is a very, very nice rifle if you're willing to be a little spendy and grab one of these brilliant Swiss rifles. And the last thing we're gonna talk about is where I'm gonna put this on my totally 100% unbiased cool meter. Now, where I really think this falls is gonna be in the B tier. So it's gonna be one of the lower scoring one, and that's because there's not a ton of history behind these. They haven't seen a ton of use in different militaries across the world, special forces unit. They may have seen some police use, but nothing too major. And then as far as pop culture goes, I haven't really seen any movies where an APC has popped up, or at least a 223 version of the APC. And in video games, again, it's going to be incredibly rare. I think Modern Warfare 2 2019 had an APC 223 in there that was a kind of a DLC style weapon, but that's really it. So it doesn't see a whole lot of use outside of just the gun culture. That's basically the only place you're going to see this. And that's going to do it for my review on the Gen 1 series of the APC223. Now, at some point, I'd like to get one of the pros in so I can show you some of the differences on that and then re-rate it on the scale with the updated ergonomics and the different parts on that. But we'll see if that ends up happening at some point. Thank you guys for watching, though. Thanks for checking it out and supporting the channel. Thanks for liking, sharing, subscribing my stuff. It's been absolutely great. And again, only a month into this, and it's going pretty well so far. So thanks again. Check out the stuff I got coming up, and I appreciate your help.